But it was very dangerous. So when some Nazi soldiers came at our apartment 2:30 in the morning, my father never knew whether it was to come and get him because his plot had been discovered, or whether they were just looking for Jewish people. And but my father was a real hero, and he kept a lot of people out of Germany during the war. And my parents were fine Christian people. My father's favorite psalm was Psalm 42, and he would read it frequently, where he would read, "As the hart pants after the water brook, so pants my soul after thee, O God. My soul thirsteth for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God?" And that was a real question for my father. When shall I appear before God? Because any day he could have been discovered to be doing the underground work, and they could have killed him. Because on a couple of occasions, I remember that he said, when the Nazis knocked on the door, he said goodbye to my mother and gave her last-minute instructions and to tell her what to do in case they were to take him away. And so it was very dangerous, but God protected us, and we're ever grateful for that.
Now, if situation got bad here, and we've even got people speaking to the Tea Parties that are calling for war with Iran. And if they started a war with Iran or with the Muslims, and wouldn't they in a fascist country, wouldn't they start rounding up the Muslims, and as a result they would be doing the same thing to the American people that they did to your father and mother in Holland and you in Holland?
You mean the Iranians would arrest the...
No, I'm saying the Americans, if we went to war with Iran, then suddenly the Muslims would become a threat, a more severe threat right now in the United States, just like the major that shot all the people at Fort Hood.
Yeah, I guess it's a possibility, and that's why we need to pray for the president, whoever the president is, that he has a lot of wisdom to foresee this sort of thing and not let it happen.
Well, we would hope for that, yes, sir.
Yeah, there was a man in East Germany. I read his story. He was a well-to-do man. He had some plantations, and he had some estates. He was well-to-do. And he said when Hitler came on the scene, we thought, oh, this guy is crazy. This is not going to work, what he wants to do. He said, so we just ignored him. He said, but next thing you know, they owned us. And his factories were bombed, his estates were taken over, and he was put in a concentration camp. Now, somehow he survived. And his story, he goes on to say, he said, today many talking heads talk about many peaceful Islamic people. And he said there were many peaceful German people, but they were not in charge. And to have many peaceful people in the country is true, but irrelevant to the idea that these people with the weapons can take over. So the fanatic Germans, the Nazis, the SS and all, they had all the weapons, and they took over. And we know what the story is. Millions of people were killed. And so the same thing we see with the fanatic Islamic jihadists. The few with the weapons are in charge, and the rest sort of let it happen unless they rise up.
Yeah, I think the same thing could be said about the Jewish people. If the Jewish people would rise up and treat the Palestinians the way they, instead of treating them like the Jews were in Holland, wouldn't things be a little bit smoother over there? Wouldn't there wouldn't be as many Muslims hating us for supporting Israel?
Yeah, well, I personally like Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I think they have been very flexible. They have given up a lot of things, land in the Gaza Strip, and they've made more concessions than anybody else. And still, the Hamas and the others still want more and more, and they, like Ahmadinejad said, he wants to eliminate Israel, and so that's a real problem there.
Now,
but God will have the last word.
tell me about the food situation in a war-torn country. Did the Nazis go after the farmers, or could you have gardens in your backyards? What was it like with food?
Well, we didn't have any gardens in the city. We lived in the city, of course, and we relied on the food that was shipped in. And we had our rationing tickets and the little money that we had. We could buy some food, but the supplies became less and less. And at one point, my brother Martin was, when he was 15 or 16, he was sent out by my father to a distant small farm where my uncle lived. And he got some food there, and I described the whole trip in the book and the difficulties that he had to get to that. But it was very difficult, and they just confiscated everything. I mean, you couldn't. The stores were closed. You couldn't buy any tires for your bicycle. You couldn't buy any toys. You couldn't buy any food. Very, very difficult. And my parents weighed about 75 and 80 pounds at the end of the war. And we were just skin and bones. And normally my parents weighed about twice as much. So it was pretty bad. But the Nazis just took over everything.
What did they do with the farms? Now, I've come up with a plan for something called Liberty Villages here, where people go to farms and ranches and work on them and learn how to feed themselves and how to feed their neighbors. But what happened to the farms in Holland when the Nazis take over?
Well, I think they had to turn over a certain amount of their crops to the Nazis, but they can keep growing some crops, but they were basically, in general, taken over, as everything else was taken over.
What about the financial situation in Holland? How did they work the money? Did they take over the money? Did they replace it with Nazi script? How did that? Do you remember how that happened? What happened?
No, I was too young to remember that. I was 4 when it started and 9 when it was over. And all I know is that my father worked for the government. He got a salary there, and that's about all we had. I was not aware of basic financial things. I do know that in the beginning of the war, in the very first weeks, the Nazi rounded up top VIPs, people of stature, like presidents of steamship companies and banks and other large companies, and they lined them up against the wall in the center of the city and executed them just to scare the people and let them know that that's what we're going to do to them if they don't cooperate with the Nazis.
Now, one of my guests on the chat room said if the Nazis were so cruel, then why is it that so many Dutch volunteered for the SS?
Oh, I don't know that there were many that volunteered for the SS. We had a group called NSB'ers. There were some traitors, but it was not that many of them. And the underground kept track of them. And after the war, the ones that were caught were either executed by the underground or put to shame with the tar and feather, so to speak. But most Dutch people are very patriotic, and but some did turn over as traitors because they were afraid that if they didn't, their family would starve to death. And when a head of a household is threatened with disaster, and they see that the Germans, the Nazis, had food that they could get if they turned traitor, it was very tempting for some of them. But none of my family, none that I know in our environment, did that. And by the way, I'm careful to distinguish between Nazis and German people. The German people are nice, wonderful people. It's the Nazis that we have problems with.
Well, that's the way I try to handle the Zionists. The Zionists are some Zionists are Jews, some are not. Some are Christian.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not the every Jew out there. That's why I think we really have to be careful into what lines we buy into here. We got to keep an open mind, and we were in a Cold War with Russia for 50 years. Tell me about Russia. What did you know about Russia? They became our allies in World War II, but the Russians invaded.
We had no dealings. We had no dealings with that aspect. We just knew our fight was against the Nazis.